r/AskReddit. What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? New guy drove a forklift into a fire hydrant, in front of a safety rep for the company. His supervisor was called over, and he immediately tells the supervisor that he won't pass a piss test, as he used his only bottle of clean piss earlier that day when he hired in. Everybody standing there immediately burst into laughter, which continued as security, also laughing, escorted him off site. Even the supervisor was all smiles, just gave him a pat on the back and wished him the best of luck. It was wild. The IT crew at a large government office worked on a ticket system, meaning that the government workers submitted their problem online and one of the IT guys would pick it up on their end. The new guy just started his first day, logged into a computer at an empty office, and submitted a reinstall entire OS request so he could spend all day there. The manager decided to check in on him before lunch to see how he was doing, and he was completely asleep. Fired before they even finished his hiring paperwork. I owned a construction business, and we recently hired 3 new employees due to expansion. I didn't get to meet them yet as my business partner was the one who interviewed them, and watched them get started on the first day, and would check in on them most mornings. Along with the new hired, we promoted one of our best workers to manager to oversee them. So after a few days I noticed that we were behind schedule on the job. This wasn't all that surprising because we had the new hires, but I decided it's best to go in and check it out to make sure everything was going well. So I call up my manager and tell him to go to a different site. We did multiple sites each day, and that I will take over at the place with the new guys. I arrive at the site half an hour late due to traffic and everyone is already hard at work, and in fact they are working efficiently and correctly on everything. I ask them a few questions about what they are doing and so on and get all the right answers. I figured the delay was just the first 2 days of learning and am very pleased that everything was picked up and seemed to go well. Now it is important that at this point I didn't actually introduce myself, and nobody asked who I was, so it seems everyone just assumed that I was just another worker from the company they never met before. So 2 hours before we are supposed to finish for the day, a guy comes over and says, "Hey, just so you know, we're all gonna head out now, but clock in that we worked the whole day." Manager allows it, and the owners never notice. So that is the story of how I fired 3 new hires on the first day I met them, and also how I had to fire our best worker. I was fired on my second day as a line cook at a Mitzel's restaurant in Washington State back in the 90s. Turns out I was hired just to threaten the job security of a long-time line cook with an attitude problem, to keep him in line. He got the message and apologized to the manager, and I was fired for breaking a yolk when flipping fried eggs. One time. I'd been a line cook for a few years by then, and thought I was doing pretty good. I was taken out the back door and terminated on day 2. I used to do a lot of field work on site investigation programs. Basically, we'd hang out on a drill rig while the drillers took rock cores. We'd log the cores, take photos, do some downhole tests, etc. New engineer gets sent to site and gets assigned the night shift. Some people love night shift, but most people don't, hence sticking the junior with night shift. After 5 nights he calls the office and says he wants to come home because he's freezing and he hates it, and he can't do it. Not clear to me if he quit or got fired, but it became plain pretty quickly that this job wasn't for him. I got pulled onto that program, and I asked the drillers what the guy's deal was. They had a propane heater in the back of their van, and despite repeated invitations to sit in the back of the van, but he just sat in his truck all night and shivered. In the middle of February. My sister was fired one day. My dad had his own small medical practice and would hire me and my sisters as our first job, to be his receptionist and file insurance claims, so we could get some workplace experience before we went job hunting in the larger world. My older sister worked for him in high school for a year. I worked for him for 2 years, then it came time for my younger sister to take over. I brought her to work to start training and said the number 1 rule in the office was, "At work he's not dad, he's the doctor and the boss." She sassed him in front of a patient her first day, with all the venom and sarcasm a teenage girl can muster when dealing with a parent asking her to do something. He fired her on the spot, and I had dragged her out of there. Mom told her at least she'd get paid for the couple of hours she managed to be employed. My document processing clerk was getting married and going on his honeymoon, so I got a short-term temp. It wasn't a temp to hire. Everything was out in the open through a legit temp agency who generally did pretty good screening. The temp's very first day, they show up with a box of things: photos, mugs, office equipment, pen cup, task light, etc., stuff to decorate a cubicle with. I advised them not to unpack. We were getting right into training. Within 2 hours after I cut them loose on a computer with a "Let me know if you need anything or have any questions," they said. "This mouse is hurting my wrist. It gave me carpal tunnel. I'm going to need workers' comp paperwork." I made an immediate call to the agency ending this contract, then told the temp, "Your paperwork is at the temp agency office. Go ahead and go see your rep there." They left their box of stuff behind. I had to have the temp agency come pick it up. This dude showed up to run food at the restaurant I work at, and he never read the ticket and didn't make any salads. He dropped a platter of food, spent 70% of his time standing around doing nothing. He was the slowest dishwasher ever. He took a water break every 2 minutes. My friend and I tried to drop him off, but he body slammed the door so hard the airbag sensor got disconnected. He ate the food my coworker made for me, and then stood around and laughed when I got pissed. He's 6 feet 4 inches BTW. Also 14. Anyway, my friend told him to leave because he just wasn't doing anything productive, and he shouldn't get paid for wasting space. He cried and then never came back. I felt bad, but not really. A day. She was a high school student, still in training, and the boss basically abused her. He didn't give her a break during her first shift, was constantly looking over her shoulder and criticizing everything. Too big. Too small. Too curved. Too straight. That wears on a 15-year-old. She was not allowed to sit down, use the bathroom, or eat. At the end of the day, she had blisters all over her hands from working unprotectedly in 2 degrees Celsius with metal equipment. She was nearly crying when her boss scolded her for putting the whipped cream on the side, per customer's request, instead of on top. She got fired when she arrived the day after for being late. She was an hour early. She was sad but also glad she didn't have to work in that ice cream salon anymore. Her hands took a week to heal. This happened last week. New girl is hired and right off the bat starts telling me that she regrets taking this job, despite being unemployed for 4 months. Because there are so many new people, so it must be a bad job because high turnover. Not really true. We just got bought by a large company, and they are hiring more people because we have more business. She tells us all about how it's her birthday, and she's going drinking after work. Does a no-call no-show the next day, which is her 3rd day. We all assume she quit. But the next day she comes in and starts just trying to work like nothing happened. The supervisor asked what happened, and she said she got in a minor car accident. He asked why she didn't call, and she said she doesn't have a cell phone. Despite being on her cell phone constantly in the office. He decided to give her one more chance but gave her a lecture about how she needs to communicate properly about missing work, and one more incident will be an automatic firing. Next day no call no show. It's my first day after my 2-day weekend, food service, so days off vary from person to person. A guy comes in. I've never seen him before, but by his direction and my coworkers' reactions, I can tell he's a new employee. He's smelling of alcohol. He grabs some food, without putting in an order for it, right in front of everyone, including one manager. He asks one of the servers where the takeout silverware is. Server redirects him to me, the host, since takeout stuff is part of my duties, not the servers. I show him the silverware, he starts grumbling, and then returns to the server and gets on their case about why the hell didn't they tell him where it is. This escalates to a fight that culminates in him getting tackled to the floor by the manager, and the cops being called. Turns out, that wasn't the first time he's shown that kind of behavior. The day before, he mouthed off at the general manager after she instructed him to take out the trash, insisting that it wasn't part of his job, it was. He later said that he didn't know she was the GM, despite her shiny, golden, as opposed to the normal white, name tag with General Manager written on it. We never saw him again after the fight. He had been there only 2 to 3 days at most, and was still in training for the position he was hired for.